Okay, let's try this one more time. I hope this is one more time. Ugh. Hello. All right. I hope this works. Please work. I'm not angry, Instagram. I'm just tired. This is like the last thing I wanted to be stressed about was an Instagram. Please work. I love you. Please work. Oh my gosh.
Tell me it's working.
I've never been so happy in my life. Oh my goodness gracious. I can't. I'm just
We're here.
the most basic things you try to do. And like, I was really fine. Like, I was fine. And then,
Listen,
okay, we're good. We're good. We're moving, we're grooving. Okay.
we're here. We're here.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
I really thought I was hallucinating. So I'm like, I know I'm not just hearing her, like,
No,
and
I
not seeing a video.
I'm a
Like,
real
yeah.
girl.
Well, thank you, Dom, for suggesting the clearing the cache, because not me telling you when you called me to like make sure your Instagram is,
And I was like, got it. I'm on it.
and then over here is like, no, not for you.
Things
Oh
happen.
my goodness. Hmm?
I said, these things happen.
Right? You just have to go with the flow. It is Tuesday, y'all. It is Black History Month.
Yes.
Yay. But also, I'm just happy to see your face. Well, I'm so excited for this conversation. So I'm just going to jump right in, reintroduce myself. Hey, y'all. My name is Nicole Jackson. I'm the founder of Black and National Parks Week. But I was mentioning earlier that since I'll be expanding my work a little bit more going into, or this year, going into the next year as well, I will be calling it Black and National Parks. So won't focus on the week. But I definitely want to be doing more stuff throughout the year. So I will be sharing more updates about that. But Black and National Parks week focuses on, it's in a week event that focuses on the stories, experiences, and contributions of everyday Black people and awesome Black people that have contributed to the creation of the national parks, and that's the U.S. national parks. Yes, there are national parks in Canada as well as globally, but I am focused on the U.S. national park system. So with that, I started in August of 2020. I wanted to focus on also creating opportunity to just capture more stories. So I started my story project, which started in February of 2021. So I'll be doing those every other month until December. And if anyone's interested, please check out my link tree in my bio. There's an application if you want to be featured, and it doesn't have to be a live. But if you're interested in sharing your story or experiences, I would love to have you featured. So with that, we have our special guest, Tashia. Am I saying your name right?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure pronouncing things right, because I'm so used to talking a lot, and then I say a name and I'm like, I totally botched that. So I'm glad I am saying it correctly. And Tashia is doing amazing work. We were able to connect not too long ago, and well, you reached out to me first, but I feel like we had a lot of intersecting passions and interests. So I'm so happy to have you on here as part of my story project and the work that I'm doing. So if you would like to introduce yourself to everyone, that would be fantastic. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. And thank you for having me on the live tonight. This is new. I think I've only done one of these in the past. But good evening, everybody. My name is Tishia Nicholson, and I am the founder of Camping Noir. I'm also the author of the Black Girl's Guide to Surviving a Weekend Unplugged, which is actually, and we'll probably get into it, kind of the genesis story for how Camping Noir got started. I am a Philadelphia native, now living in South Jersey. I have been camping for the last, I think this is year 17, but have been an outdoor hiker, all things water related,
Mm-hmm.
since I was a child. So I had my dad to thank for that. So, yeah, I don't want to give up too much. Like, what else do you want me to say? Because I know we're going to uncover a lot of it in this conversation.
Yeah, we're going with the vibes, going with the flow. So yeah, I just kind of want to start with like your just nature connection journey in general. Like, how did that start for you? Like, with you just having an interest in being outdoors or just learning from being outdoors. If you had like your earliest memory of that to share.
Um, Kind of what I said my intro, I had my dad to thank for a lot of that. So if we talk about like early memories and core memories being unlocked, I basically know the entire park system of Philadelphia. So that's like Valley Green. Because every Saturday he would wake us up, me and my younger sister, and we would go hiking. Like we would go hiking through all the back, and my dad is a big off trail hiker as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I know all the in between trails.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he was the first person I ever went rock climbing with. My mother has a horrifying story to tell about that and how that almost went
Mm-hmm.
terribly awry and why she banned him from taking my two younger sisters out on any more of his little expeditions. My first kayaking and canoeing experience was with him. So as I think from the time that I could walk and probably when he could throw me on his back, he
Yeah.
had us out in the greenery.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I kind of carried that with me throughout my
Mm-hmm.
entire life. So I've always had an affinity for being outside. Love being barefoot.
Mm-hmm.
If I
Mm-hmm.
can stick these feet in some sand or some dirt, I'm happy.
Yeah.
Um, and it's kind of just like morphed, I guess, over time. So, the curiosity in me is like, okay, well, what else can I do outside in
Yeah.
nature? And that has kind of increased my experiences when it comes to green spaces up to and including camping, which
Mm-hmm.
I decided to go put a nail in that and kind of create a whole group for us, by us,
Yeah.
related to that and other outdoor adventures.
Yeah. So like, let's get into that. Like, how did this all start, Camping Noir, and like, what was the um, kind of visioning behind creating it, and like, what has it done for you?
Um, that's a packed
You
question, Nicole. Okay,
get
so
a
the Genesis
lot of
story,
Oprah questions, Oprah type questions from
it's
me.
cool.
So,
It's
you know.
totally cool. Um, okay, so how did I get into camping? Because this is not something I started in my youth,
Yeah.
right? So long story short, and I cover a lot of this in the book.
Mm-hmm.
But I originally Philadelphia's home, like I mentioned earlier. Moved here about 17 years ago. A lot of my friends, we were all moving away from home at that
Mm-hmm.
time, and looking for a way to still get together. Hi, Monica. And still looking for a way to kind of like get together, spend time, and looking for a way that we thought was going to be low cost to do
Yeah.
all of that. So they left that research and discovery project to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the great idea, let's go camping. And there's about 6 or 7 of us that all grew up together.
Mm-hmm.
Out of that number, only 3 of us ended up going. Um, and which was hilarious in and of itself. But the first time we went, I immediately fell in love. I think we all immediately fell in love with it.
Yeah.
What it was not the cheap, getaway that I thought it was going to
Mm-hmm.
be. Camping. Listen, we all know that's one of the accessibility issues, right? To outdoor recreation is just the cost of
Mm-hmm.
it in general. And I think we spent cruise worth of money on that first camping trip. Did all the things wrong, bought all the things we didn't need, got caught up in
Right.
the glitz and the sparkly, fire sticks that you don't need, y'all. But we did all of it.
Mhm.
And that trip in and of itself created kind of a recurring trip every year. So at least every year for the first 13, we went at least once together. And every time I would tell people that I'm going camping, especially at my job at the time, they look at me with this like, the face, like, and
Like, I'm
it's like,
going.
yeah, I'm going camping. That's what I said.
Right.
And I would hear from everybody, and again, like very fun and kind of just like um, jokingly, like Black people don't camp, and I was
Mhm.
hearing on both sides of the fence,
Right.
like both sides of the
Right.
fence.
Mhm.
And one night I decided to write a book that was kind of like a screw all y'all that say that Black people don't camp, like we do, and I'm
Wait,
going
so
to
wait,
tell my
wait,
story
wait,
about how
rewind,
it
rewind.
happened.
What do you
Go ahead.
mean? So, what, like, you literally just like, I'm writing a book? Like, how does that?
So if I told you the real story about how this book got started, you'd be like, "Girl, what? What happened?" I call this book and this whole thing like Camper Noir. I tell people was like the oops baby.
Yeah.
Like I never intended to give birth to this. I never
Mhm.
intended for like any of this to happen. I knew I had a book in me,
Yeah.
but I didn't think it was a book about camping and things of that nature. And I mean, if you want to hear the story, I'll tell you really quickly. So one night, sitting in my basement
Uh-huh.
at like 3 o'clock in the morning because I do my best work at night, I literally had in my head a voice, call it what you want. I don't know what we
Mhm.
would refer
Mhm.
to it, but literally directed to pick up my computer and start writing, like just start
Mhm.
writing. And
Mhm.
I tell people that I know it wasn't like um, I'm not making this up because I literally
Yeah.
said out loud in response to it about what?
Right.
Like I literally said it out loud.
Uh-huh.
And 4 days later, the first draft of the Black Girl's Guide to Surviving a Weekend Unplugged was written. I didn't sleep.
Wow.
It was just like I just had to get it out.
Yeah.
And so that really is how the book got started. Like
Mhm.
if there ever were a divine intervention story, that would be one of them for me.
Mhm.
Um, and so I wrote this book kind of just like off the top of my head, and then you start telling people about this very crazy thing that you did in 4 days, and they're like, so tell me more about it. Like, what's this about? What's going on with it? And again, both sides of the
Yeah.
fence, my melanated and non-melanated friends,
Mhm.
are they're asking questions, and I'm learning more and more and more about, something that I thought was just a book that I was getting out of my
Yeah.
head and getting that on to, a Word document. And
Mhm.
I was used to my non-melanated friends saying, Black people don't, can't. Y'all don't,
Right.
like, this is not something that, we see. Fair. But when I
Mhm.
started telling a lot of, especially the women who look like you and I, what I was endeavoring to do, that kind of opened up a lot of discourse just around, I guess, this notion that this is not something that we really subscribe to.
Mhm.
And I wanted to unpack that a lot more because number one, it had me check my privilege, if you will, because at that point, yeah, of course, I noticed that I don't see many people that look like me when I'm going on these hikes and doing all these things, but I never really stopped to think about it. And now that I'm having these conversations with individuals, it's like, oh, okay, now I wrote a book.
Yeah.
Now, what else am I going to do about all the things that I'm hearing?
Right.
And that's kind of like, that's how Camp Noir came to be. And if we just back up for a second and talk about a lot of the
Mhm.
themes that I kept hearing time and time again, it was number one, I don't see people out there that look like me. We know that.
Yep.
Everything from the marketing to the actual outdoor experiences
Yeah.
themselves is very whitewashed, if we're being completely honest. This sense of sisterhood, like I don't have
Mhm.
anybody to do it with. Like I've thought about doing it, but I don't,
Mhm.
none of my friends are really up for this, or,
Yeah.
I even feel weird going to my friends and
Yeah.
putting this out there. right?
Yeah, I like that you bring that up because there is reservations. 'Cause you're like, oh, I'm interested, but then if I bring this up to family and friends, they'd be like, "What you?
Correct.
Are you okay?"
Exactly, exactly. But I think the other side of that is that, it's crazy how hard it is, or the concept of like making friends as we get older.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah.
like so outlandish. Like it's
And you're just
crazy.
more guarded.
Yes, way
But
more
you're like,
guarded.
but we don't have to be. Like
Right,
we can make this
right.
easier. But yeah.
Um, there was a lot of feedback about, not knowing where to
Mhm,
go. Um, is it safe to do these things, and not
mhm.
even safe from the aspect of like, animal knowledge and
Yeah.
plant knowledge, but humans, from other humans, right?
Yeah.
Which I often tell people that if there's anything you're going to be scared of outside, it's the people, it's
Mhm.
not the animals.
Exactly.
But having a respect for it all and being prepared kind of gets you through.
Mhm.
And then the other thing is just, again, going back to adulting and this whole idea that as we become adults, we're not supposed to have fun anymore. We're not supposed
Yeah.
to seek out adventure anymore. We're not supposed to, like life is just supposed to be boring and
Yeah.
gray.
We can't have
And
joy. We can't
correct.
make plans to
Correct.
like, hang out and chill out. Like we have to be so like restricted with our time and
Right.
yeah.
And if you are doing that, then it's kind of like the go-tos are like clubbing or brunch or like, the main culprits, and not really
Mhm.
exploring anything beyond that. So as I'm hearing these things, I'm like, okay, well, I felt that way too, right?
Yeah.
Because I've been doing this for 17 years and asking people every year, go camping with me. And they're like, yeah, no. So I'm going with my same two friends
Mhm.
every year. So it's like a lot of that also resonated with me as well. And as I continued the journey of writing the book, it comes to me that this is not just about a book. Actually, the book is just the beginning of all of this. It's
Yeah.
up to me to do something more about it. And
Mhm.
so that really is how Camp Noir got started. And those are the tenets of Camp Noir: sisterhood,
Yeah.
adventure, wellness through nature, and of course, increasing the representation of Black and Brown bodies in green spaces.
Yes. I love that you like the intuitiveness of that, of understanding that okay, there's something here and I need to lead with that energy and trusting yourself even though you don't really know like have the full picture of it, but like just leaning into it, but then it being like you're saying something bigger than yourself that you're committing more to. And like I feel like that's such a vulnerable but like inspiring space to be in, if that makes
Yeah, it
sense.
does make sense.
um
Thank
but
you.
yeah, that's amazing. I love that. And it's literally like the fact that you were like, yeah, I did this in 4 days, but then like sometimes it doesn't have to be this regimented, thing for it to be impactful.
Yeah, that's very true. Very true. I didn't get it published in 4 days. That took almost 11 more months. But I got the ideas out of my head in four.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the fact that you even said a draft, like you have to like even the editing and going back and tweaking things, like that's part of the process too. So it doesn't have to be this I guess perfect thing that you're producing because you're always going to get more out of it when you go at certain times of your life, certain seasons, like you're pulling out um wisdom and gems, and like other people are making connections that relate to them. So like I feel like there's these like layers of connections that continue to create something beautiful for yourself and for other people.
Absolutely. And going back to your point about like, doing this without really knowing what it was that I was creating, because I didn't. I just knew
Yeah.
that I was doing something,
Hmm.
trying to create something that kind of responded to all of the things that I was hearing.
Hmm.
But I didn't. I honestly went into this not knowing what it was. Like,
Hmm.
this is something I like to do. I didn't know that it would become a thing, if you will.
Hmm. Hmm.
But it seeing the individuals who show up and seeing what they get out of it, and seeing the tenets upon which I
Hmm.
created it, like seeing that in motion and in real
Hmm.
life, it really gives me a lot of joy. It
Hmm.
really makes me happy to, when I hear people who met on a hike,
Hmm.
I touch base with them. They were like, yeah, I saw such and such the other day. And I'm like, yes. It's
I
happening.
love
Like
that.
this is the whole point of it. This is the point,
Yes.
the whole point of
Mhm.
it. Or they drag somebody else out to go on a hike with them. Like, it really does. That was the whole point of it. You know what I mean? Like, even if you never come on another Camping Noir event, even though I hope people do, we create an experience and make them safe enough to do that. But at least you
Mhm.
find something in it, or you find enough courage in that one experience to then take that out and grab somebody else by the hand and bring them out with you.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's
what it is.
awesome. I kind of want to delve into the national park perspective and like how did that your relationship with national parks start, if you have any memories to share, and how has that transformed your connection with nature and even just thinking about community and like public lands. When did that start for you?
I think that goes back to youth again,
Mm-hmm.
like all of those random trips through the parks in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania and all the random road trip trips that we would go
Mm-hmm.
on, end up in a green space. I really do think that it's the memories start as far back as that. And
Mm-hmm.
again, it's just been kind of like um, growing upon each other, if you will.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You were the person that educated me on the fact that there's a difference between capital in
Yeah.
national park and lowercase in national park. So thank you for that information. Um, and then, when you did, I told you when you told me that, I literally went looking like, which company have I been to? So I've
Yeah.
only been to one Capital Land National Park, and that's been
Mm-hmm.
Shenandoah
Yeah.
in Virginia, and that's
Mm-hmm.
very recent. That was 2 years ago.
Uh-huh.
Driving through Atlanta, and we camped out overnight there instead of like in the hotel. The
Mm-hmm.
tent is always in the trunk of the car. So
So gotta be ready. Gotta be
right,
ready.
so it's like, where are we now? Is there like a campsite nearby? And so that's what we did. Definitely looking forward to going back there and just having
Mhm.
a daytime experience
Yeah.
in that park. But then also, just being able to explore the lowercase in parks,
Yeah. Hmm.
learning about them and knowing that a lot of the places that, I've just been to already fall under those categories here in New Jersey and Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
I was just up in where was I? Finger Lakes back
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
October, November,
Hmm.
and I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. It was like Washington something. It'll come to me. But being able to just kind of walk through there, especially with the new knowledge that you gave me, like,
Yeah.
oh, this is where I am, right? So when you talk about community and just those experiences, I think again, whenever I step on any or into any green spaces, regardless of
Mhm.
like location, classification, things of that nature, I am now acutely aware that it's usually me and whoever I'm there with
Yeah.
are the only individuals that look like me.
Hmm.
Um, and so in one way, I'm not going to say it makes me sad because not sad.
Yeah.
I think it inspires me to keep
Yeah.
going.
Hmm.
I think it inspires me to learn as much as I can about the green spaces that we have
Yeah.
in our backyards and abroad, right? Because Jersey is the Garden State and it's
Hmm.
beautiful.
Hmm.
Being able to just like drive through and like just pull over the side of the road and just you
Yeah.
know pop up in a random green space.
Hmm.
Um, but definitely gives you the drive to kind of bring those experiences to more people.
Yeah.
Sometimes I often get frustrated there's not enough weekends in the year for me to plan things to just have people come out and explore,
Hmm.
but also makes it so I feel like I want to capitalize off of every opportunity that we're out there to make sure that again people are feeling safe in those environments, um, that we can learn as much about the flora and fauna of that space as well as we can. I call myself, I'm like a baby herbalist. I have a certification in herbalism,
Hmm.
but I love going into these green spaces and helping people understand like this herb and it's not weeds, like
Yeah.
changing the whole dynamic and thought process of things being weeds, and weeds are
Hmm.
medicine. That's what I
Yeah.
often tell people. So helping them
Another
understand
form
how
of a detachment, like
there's a
from that,
difference.
because we're all connected, but for some reason we have to have this hierarchy
Correct.
over
Correct.
nature as humans. So
And
yeah.
I mean, I think that's it's about also unlearning and reprogramming or deprogramming, if you will, because, marketing has done a lot to help us subscribe to some of these things that disconnect us from, nature
Yeah.
and one another.
Yeah.
So, also, and I think that's a lot of what it's about, when we're talking about building community, just helping us reconnect to the land,
Mm-hmm.
helping us reconnect to to one another,
Yeah.
allowing us to be more vulnerable with one another, right? Because I think that's where the connection starts. Um, and then there's the whole idea of like storytelling and
Yes.
collective experience that comes on the back of that. But at first we have to break down those barriers and those
Mm-hmm.
walls in order to get to that. And then ultimately helping us reconnect to ourselves. One of the things that I noticed, so my past life, I used to work in pharma,
Mm-hmm.
and very stressful. Anybody who's ever worked in that industry will tell you. And what
Mm-hmm.
I noticed is that at the times when I felt most stressed out, I was often finding myself like in the woods or, just sitting at the ocean, like,
Yeah.
in front of and watching the waves crash. And it was something that I was doing innately, like kind of like my subconscious was taking me there until one day I was sitting there and in the cold. It was like
Mm-hmm.
winter. And I'm sitting out there with a coat and I'm like, I kind of look really, really crazy right now. Like, how did I end up here? And that just kind of starts the thought process of like the things that led you here. And then kind of like that whole recall that, oh, wait, this is not the first time I've done something like this.
Yeah.
And kind of like that nature is kind of like a beacon, if you will, or like,
A
yeah,
reminder,
that kind of,
like, just come back home
right,
to the calm
exactly.
and the peace.
Come back home.
Yeah.
And then also a reminder to just breathe.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
when we're talking about connection, I think it's in the relationship to national parks and green spaces and what
Yeah.
they do for community and also just connection. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
three-dimensional, right? Reconnection
Mm-hmm.
to earth, reconnection to one another, and then reconnection to self.
Yeah.
Someone said in the chat, it makes you feel grounded. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And just, I think nature gives us permission to breathe. It gives us
Mm-hmm.
permission to just be ourselves and just show up. Just show up.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be anything when you're
Yeah.
there. You know what I mean? Just show up.
Yeah.
And I
Don't
think
make me cry over here. You're gonna make me cry.
I'm not trying to make you cry.
Nature be naturing, and it's like it's
Nature.
so
Yeah.
beautiful. So like you even just sharing that, like that just opens up the pulls at the heartstrings because I and you sharing how it's impacted you. I'm feeling the same thing of how like just these memories and very small like interactions, but like they've meant so much because it is like your whole body, like your mind, your spirit, um all of that is can be so heavily weighed down
Yeah.
by life and society and like the negativity and like all of that stuff. But then once you get out, like I just literally like I'm stressed, I'm feeling anxious, going through depression. And then I go outside like 5 minutes. I'm like, oh my goodness, like it just dissipates. Like
Right.
it's amazing.
And you and I talked about this before, the pandemic, right?
Mm-hmm.
The
Yep.
first time we saw people going outside and heading to these green spaces and like the most overwhelming historical numbers that we've seen in at least in our generation, right? And I don't think that was a coincidence. I think
Yeah.
that, the collective stress and the individual stress of what everybody was going through during during that time, it again, when you said it just calls you home.
Yeah.
And if we pay attention or slow down enough, that homing system goes like they start
Yep.
it
It's
starts
like
connecting.
I've been here the whole time. Like hello.
Right, exactly. So what you waiting for? Come on out. So I do think that it's just something that is innately in us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and again, going back to the things that nature gives us permission to do, slow down.
Yeah. Yes.
It teaches us the cycle of things. It gives us,
Mm-hmm.
it at least shows me or gives me now an appreciation for the cycle of things, even, things like the moon cycle or the life
Yeah.
cycle and how, and depending on where you are in this age spectrum, how you're in different seasons of your life, right? So there's a lot to be learned. When I go to different parks, I love the fact that no two, like, even though there's trees everywhere, no two are the same.
Exactly. It's like a fingerprint.
Exactly. There's going to be different trees there. There's going to be different sounds. Like you were talking about, there's national parks everywhere. So last year I had the fortune of going to Oka National Park in Canada and camping out there for a week. And one of the things I noticed immediately is when I woke up the next morning, the birds sounded different. The same sounds that I'm used to, waking up here. And I was like, oh wow, that's pretty cool. If I go camping down in Brandon T. Burns State Forest down in South Jersey, it's the first time I went there, the first night got eerily quiet.
Yeah.
Eerily quiet. And that almost had me on my, wait a minute, y'all. I'm about to spin the block on up out of here because, when nature gets quiet, something is around. So, I was hyper vigilant that first night that I was there, but then I realized that's just the makeup of that forest. And so, though there's greenery all around you, no two parks, no two green spaces are the same. They're each going to have their own unique personalities about them. And the more time that you spend there, the more acclimated and accustomed you get to it, and then, build more of an appreciation for the diversity of nature as well.
Yeah. That instantly makes me think of our ancestors, what they had to go through and like learning the land that was foreign to them, but being able to be so resilient and learn, what it was providing for them, whether it be refuge or medicine or food. Like I feel like there's so many connections with that of them there being that fear, but then also I have to learn this to survive. And the Harriet Tubman and how she used the sycamore trees and astronomy and birds, bird calls. Like it's just amazing, like a beautiful representation of the connection of nature when you really pay attention and slow down
and immerse yourself in it as well. And like you said, you slow down enough to really receive it because it's speaking to us all the time. It's it's giving our bodies cues. There's this reciprocity when you're in nature as well. But again, you have to just give yourself time or enough to just slow down and just allow yourself to reconnect with it.
Yes. So you mentioned Shenandoah. So I've been to Shenandoah and I could not get over the amount of overlooks. Like just driving, was it Skyline Drive? And like, I think I went in, it was really hot. It was like summertime. It was in June, but like the higher we went in elevation, the cooler it got, which was great. But like, there was like over 100 overlooks, I think. I wanted to stop at everyone. I was literally like, these views are amazing and I can't not like get out of the car, like stop the car, get out, take a picture, like at everyone. So just like thinking about your trip, you said it was at night, it wasn't during the day.
I feel that's why I have to go and have like the daytime experience because we got there probably at like 9 o'clock at night, and then we were back on the road at like the next morning. So I got to see the water. What's that? That river or lake that's right there. There was like a woman up there fishing. That part was beautiful. But I was like, I have to come back and really spend some time.
You realize how big these parks are. Like once you realize, like, look at the maps and all that stuff, and you're like, wait, there's so much more to see and like engage with, whether it's through camping or hiking or birding. Like each experience is going to bring you something different to pay attention to and to notice and to like immerse yourself in, which I really love.
Very true. Someone in the chat asked, how do you get past the fear?
Of being outdoors, or is there something specific they mean?
Hi, Doug. By the way, I know Doug. Hi, Doug. Thanks for joining. Oh, my best friends are on here too. Hi, ladies.
Welcome, friends. I love the support. That's awesome.
They always got my back. If you're asking a general question about like get over I'm going to assume you're going back to the question about Brendan T. Burns and kind of like, being outdoors in general,
Mhm.
just doing it. I think that also, social media has made us a little foolish, right?
Mhm.
So we think that going outside is just putting on some sneakers and, some cute athleisure wear and, heading out into the green spaces. And it's not that.
Yeah.
There is a way to prepare for it. I mean, there's no such thing, at least for me,
Mhm.
Nicole, I'll defer to you too on
Yep.
that, but I never feel like I'm ever 100% prepared for any outdoor experience
Mhm.
because Mother Nature will turn on you in a dime.
Mhm.
You would think that you know a trail like the back of your hand and there'll be a down tree or they rerouted the trail all of a sudden, without telling you, and then you have to figure out your way from that. Recent rain may cause flooding, through or across like a river or something, a body of water that you have to cross.
Yeah.
So I think the best thing you do is try to be prepared. And I think a lot of that is one, knowing what to wear, right? Um, Protecting your feet because I mean, if your feet are that's your most powerful tool, if you ask me. And
Mhm.
if your feet are not
Mhm.
functioning, you are dead in the water. Like, so and we can talk about, ways that we've kind of gotten people up to snuff with that if you want to
Mhm.
continue that conversation. But just having a general idea of the terrain, knowing what potential wildlife you could encounter.
Mhm.
I want to say that saying to people in the 17 years that I've been camping, I've only seen a bear cub once,
Mhm.
and that has never been on the property or the grounds in which we are camping. That was driving through the park, and we camp in bear country quite often.
Mhm.
Um, I think know what equipment that you need, knowing the basics. Depending on the activities you're doing, there are going to be some essentials that you're always going to need to have.
Yeah.
So, with hiking, a headlamp, having a means of starting fire, a compass or a map,
Mhm.
things of that nature. If you are camping, a lot of those same things are going to be repurposed,
Yeah.
but also making sure that where you're pitching your tent is not on, a fire ant colony or,
Right.
something of
Or
that nature. So,
something that's gonna
right,
flood.
exactly. Or,
Yeah.
exactly. So if it rains, you're not, the
Mhm.
water is just not going to wash you away, like
Mhm.
those type of things. So I think knowing those basics definitely set you up for it. Um, I think also having a respect for nature and that's where I was going when I first started the conversation about how like social media has kind of made us a little frivolous in our thinking sometimes. But
Mhm.
if you come across wildlife, not
Mhm.
approaching it,
Yeah.
like let's start there. If you see a bear cub, it's not for you to take out your phone and decide that this is a cute Instagram moment.
Right.
Like, no, because even if you don't see the mother sees you, baby. Like, trust and believe that. And
Mhm.
if they can't see you, they smell you. So, knowing that when you see these cute, furry things in nature, that is not your sign to approach it. That
Mhm.
is actually your sign to
Yeah.
create as much
Perfect.
distance as possible so that you have a higher survival rate.
Mhm.
So
Not the
common,
higher survival rate.
girl, I mean, let's be very realistic about it. For all the great things that is about nature, there's always like everything has the light and the dark, right? There
Mhm.
is about balance. And we've read it. We've read about the not so great things that happen to people out
Mhm.
in, these natural experiences. So I think a lot of times it's using common sense, right? Your common sense.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know that if you get lost, you don't keep walking.
Mhm. Mhm.
Don't
Mhm.
keep walking. You actually should stay put and try to find a way to get communication or a signal for help.
Yeah.
So understanding, I think, those basics, and I think it's very important to do things like read my book, or to take like a wilderness survival training, even a quick Google search on like how to prepare for a hike, or how to prepare for a camping trip, or like what are the 10 things I need to know going out into this scenario, can really set you up for success. And then, when you're prepared, that fear tends to
Yeah.
subside.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever fear is there, fear is healthy also. So
Yeah.
let me also say that,
It's not a
there's healthy
bad
levels of fear.
thing.
Right. Fear is not a bad thing. So I don't think, I know, sometimes I think fear just, if you go into a situation like this fearless, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then on the flip side of that, just doing it and doing, somebody said you'll end up on IG for dumb ways to die. We don't want
Right? Right?
that. But
Don't
like,
be stupid. Like common
exactly.
sense. Again, common sense. Yeah.
But like I was saying before that, like I think sometimes just doing it, just getting
Mm-hmm.
up there and doing it, strapping on those sneakers. If you've done your at least your basic research, strapping on those sneakers, putting on that backpack, making sure you have an adequate amount of water, things of that nature.
First aid
Um,
kit.
First aid kit, yes, making
Mhm.
sure somebody always knows where you are, and that's whether it's
Mhm.
camping, hiking, doing anything on the water,
Yeah.
making sure somebody knows where you are. I call that the first
Yeah.
level of defense about being in nature. Yeah, so just taking some of those basic steps and then just doing it. And the more and more you do it, the more comfortable you'll feel. You'll feel in nature. You won't be ready to like jump and run when you hear different sounds, or like a rustling in the leaves that you can't really see where it's coming
Mhm.
from. That won't cause as much consternation, I guess is the word I'm
Yeah.
looking for. The more you do it.
Hmm. Yeah. I would say for sure, um, yeah, there's basic things like you don't have to be an advanced, you know, hiker, camper, whatever. I think having the basics around, knowing how to call for help, like the first aid kit, but also like, like having a flashlight, having something that makes noise, like
Yes.
very like things we want to attract, not attention from wildlife, but the people that can help you. And like the maps, like I feel like maps,
Hmm.
not GPS, but actual
And not all trails. Oops,
actual
did I say it?
map people. Because we can't always use
You
technology.
cannot.
And
And sometimes these,
so,
when you're using these GPS systems as well, or some of like the all trails of the outdoor recreation,
mhm.
sometimes they're outdated.
Yep.
And so, you again, a good old fashioned map
Yeah.
will always be your best friend, your best
Yeah.
resource.
Yes. And that's something I definitely like. There's more learning that I want to do, like going back to the basics of like stuff that people would consider like, oh, that's too primitive or like that's outdated. Like, why are we still, using paper map? I'm like, there is still a benefit. Or even having a compass, like knowing how to read a compass,
Right.
like those kinds of things really do come in handy when you're out for the first time, places you haven't been before, or just having time to practice those basic skills, no matter how primitive they are, they come in handy. So I think having that understanding of like you can continue to learn how to develop your outdoor skills is like versus like, oh, I'm too old, or the time has passed, or um, the fear, if there's fear around that, then it might prevent you from learning new things too. So I think having that awareness, but also knowing that you will know more than when you started versus nothing at all.
And what's funny
So
is I've been camping for this is like year 17 or 18 now, and I still
mhm,
learn something new on
right,
every single camping trip.
right. Hmm.
Like there's an aha moment on how to be better prepared
Yeah.
for the next experience.
Hmm.
Even on hikes and things of that nature, I've been hiking since a baby. But you might come across a park or a situation in a park where they have their trail
Yep.
markers that are different. And
Hmm.
so being able, or using context clues from what you do know already about it to kind of figure out, what this system is and how to navigate your way through on that as well.
Yeah.
So, I would say nature's always teaching us. It's
Mhm.
not, it's not a,
Nature's on
it's
there.
not one lesson.
Nature will
Not
tell
one
you about yourself
lesson.
in a second.
Oh, child. Go out there.
Nature be like, listen.
Go out there thinking, my favorite thing would be when I watch Naked and Afraid and people are like, I'm going to conquer, such and such. And I'm like, this is about to end in day 3. Because nature cannot be conquered. And when
No.
you go out there in that mindset, again, you are setting yourself up for failure. It's not about conquering nature. It's
Yeah.
about living in harmony with it or living in balance with nature. Like conquering
That
is
humbles
most
you really quick. You're like, oh, I thought I knew.
yeah,
Nope. Sit down somewhere.
no, no.
Sit down
And then
somewhere.
always,
Um,
let's also talk about always being prepared.
yeah.
So, and I want to say, I'm going to use this term for lack of a better one, but being prepared for the worst. Let me just
Mm-hmm.
say that. And what do I mean
Mm-hmm.
by that? So, I always check the weather. Let's also put that out there since we're dropping gems. Always check the weather before you head outside to nature. But here's the thing, and Nicole, you've probably seen this as well. The weather forecast says one thing, and what we often
Right.
forget is that, natural systems create their own ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is that this 80-degree sunny day becomes downpours and torrential rain for the next 6 hours
Yeah.
because that wasn't taken into account. So,
Yep.
when you're hiking or doing things of that nature, maybe the weather says it's going to be perfect, but making sure you have a rain poncho, at the very least. When we
Especially
go
when those
camping,
temperatures drop,
yes.
hypothermia. Ooh,
Yeah,
no.
we don't want
Mm-mm.
that. Don't want that. Yeah, I feel like this is the perfect time to tell people cotton kills, guys. Don't wear cotton.
Do
It
not.
increases
That's a
children's
no-no.
development. We can teach a whole lesson on that one.
Right?
Um, but, just preparing for what could be conceivably the worst, even though, if it's set up for the most perfect of days. And I guess just that goes back and just reiterating, just being prepared,
Yeah.
being prepared for what could happen,
Mm-hmm.
but setting yourself up for the best possible outcome either
Yeah.
way.
And you can have plans, like you can plan stuff, to a T, but you also have to be okay with pivoting because not everything is going to be perfect in the way of like, you can plan things out from past information, but that might change, within a few minutes, few hours. And that's, I realized I had an example of that for the weather situation when I went to Great Smoky Mountains. And it was in December. It was really like nice, the days are cold, but also having to consider it's December, the days are shorter, so you have to go out earlier. So I had to get up at like maybe 6 or 7 and then be back to like my Airbnb or whatever by like 4 o'clock, maybe 4:30, because it got dark really fast. And you don't want to be out, in the dark on trails that you're not familiar with. And then using the visitor center, because the rangers have a better idea of, the roads that are closed, like there's ice, there's fallen trees, that stuff you're not going to necessarily find online. Um, but it's good to check with the rangers to see kind of like, hey, what is available, accessible, whether you're walking or using a vehicle. And that was super helpful because there was a lot of down trees, there was a lot of ice. So a lot of people had to do, just showing up versus getting the information. They were at a loss. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's very important too. Yeah, this is like I'm learning so much in terms of like how the park system is set up because I guess I don't know, a certain point in time I was so fixated on the more like open wilder parks, and now that I know that there's these, park units like monuments and historical sites and like thinking about history and culture, like it gets me more excited to learn more about those areas from like, people that live in those towns, like the history, how it connects to the past, how we're utilizing those spaces, and like even learning about indigenous land and um, having more in-depth conversations around land use and connection to nature, I guess in a more intimate way. So for um, outside of, I don't know, the typical, I think it's 65 now, the capital N, capital P national parks, but 400 something plus of the national park units, and that includes like scenic trails, you know, like the seashores, like national seashores. Like I didn't know any of that stuff existed. I'm just like, oh,
So you
there's
put doing all
60
of that.
something, and they're like, no, there's more. And I'm just like, oh, there's 85 million acres of National Park Service land. Like what? Like so having like that like crack me wide open, but then also like, oh, I can go in and learn about these things one step at a time, so I didn't get so overwhelmed. So I always like, okay, so I'm in Ohio. Where do I start?
Mm-hmm.
Cuyahoga Valley was my first national park exposure, and then outside of that, thinking about like the history around the Underground Railroad and like Black historical figures that connected to the creation of the national parks. Colonel Charles Young, he was the first Black park superintendent of the National Park Service when it was managed under the U.S. Army. So like all of these things are just like, oh, there's a connection to Ohio, but also to California and the Buffalo Soldiers and like the creation of like tourism, like recreational tourism, like all of these different layers. And I'm just like, and there's so many more parks. So that's where I'm just like, oh my goodness, I'm so excited to learn more and like just be immersed in that knowledge, but also be able to share it with other people that look like me so they have even more of a connection and motivation to want to go out and seek their own experiences and create their own memories and all of that. So for you, was there anything in particular that you like once you found out like, hey, there's this whole national park system that we have that you wanted to learn more about or wish you'd had known more about?
So I think that's the discovery phase I'm in right now
Mm-hmm.
with regards to it. This has been a whole kind of growing
Yeah.
experience for me. And so that learning that there are areas within New Jersey and New York and even Pennsylvania that, are connected to the Underground Railroad,
Mm-hmm.
learning still more about that, learning more about the native tribes who,
Mm-hmm.
whose land we are ultimately, walking upon,
Mm-hmm.
has also been very eye-opening. And I mean, full transparency, I just learned that last year.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and when you learn that, you realize that you've been on trails that are named after these tribes.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, oh, a Eureka moment, and then going in and digging deeper into that as well. So, understanding and finding that out or learning that, I think made the whole concept of land acknowledgement that much
Mm-hmm.
more significant to me,
Mm-hmm.
because it is very easy, my niece, it is very easy to just go outside and just, think that, I'm just walking on through the park
Yeah.
and not understanding that, there's a lot of rich history there that we don't know, that has been buried as well, that has been rewritten.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And so I think that's the next phase of it for me in terms of my
Yeah.
experiences in green spaces, kind of like digging deeper into unlocking those stories
Mm-hmm.
of our ancestors, our
Mm-hmm.
ancestral cousins,
Yeah.
and being able to then share that more
Mm-hmm.
and integrate that more into the experiences that we have more outside.
Mm-hmm. So how was your experience with the outdoors and even national parks? Like, have you shared, because I know a big part of um, with it being Black History Month, like the purpose and impact of storytelling, but also collecting those stories to be passed on and shared. Has that been a part of your journey as
Are you
well?
talking about our historical stories or like modern day situations?
Modern day, but then yeah, how it connects to like the fact that you wrote a
Um,
book about your experiences, but
yeah.
like how do you, I guess, think about passing that on and sharing that with family and friends for them to do the same?
Um, so I think when we were talking earlier about just, one of the three dimensions of like nature
Mm-hmm.
reconnecting us or could, earth, one another, ourselves. If we focus on that second piece, which is kind of like each other, Um, the story, so again, Camp Noir is at the core of it for Black and brown women. And I think when we talk about the storytelling that happens there, a lot of it is about how life is just life for a lot of us.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's about the storytelling and the conversations that take place are the conversations that we're not often having with, comfortable having with our friends and family for fear of being judged. I love that because it kind of allows us to kind of, strip off these layers of perfection and these layers of subscribing to being super women and all these different narratives that really don't do us any any good, especially mentally, right? And then allows us to break that down and then allows us then to build each other up,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think when we talk about collective storytelling,
Yeah.
and we talk about it kind of like a heart level, that's kind of how it takes place within the Camp Noir community. I mean, I love these ladies, like seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount of honesty and vulnerability that they show up with, that then again creates a safe space for other people to come in and kind of share whatever's going on with them. A lot of these women are mothers, they're wives. Um, Life for Black and brown women, we know, is not the
Yeah.
easiest. Um, and we're often held to a certain standard that most other people are not.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to come into this space and really offload that, and leave that in the woods, leave that at the campfire, and walk away feeling a little lighter, I think is one of the most powerful ways that storytelling, I see it kind of unfold within
Yeah.
the camping community. Um, you know, Being able to use my story and, my experience with camping to then create this space, I think, like, again, I really don't think that I'm happy to have been able to do it, but I think that the end goal is what I see happening right now within the community, right? So, it took me having to kind of overcome my fears of telling my story and kind of sharing my experiences as this Black girl in nature and, that and then somehow giving other people permission to kind of dig deeper, utilizing, these natural experiences to do the same and then somehow create cohesiveness or, um, sisterhood, friendship, camaraderie
Mm-hmm.
in the midst of it.
Yeah. And I love you can start anywhere. Like that was my thing. I got so caught up in it needing to be this perfect environment, perfect situation. And then I was like, wait, I have to start with myself. Like what is my relationship with nature? How have I used it to thrive, and to learn more about myself, but also my community, um, and helping fill in those gaps of like, why is there fear? Why is there a disconnect? Um, why is there less support in being able to come together and do more of these things, as a community, and realizing like it's we still have a ways to go, but like it really does start with you and like your understanding of your relationship and like how you want to improve, um, and like just the hard conversations you have to have with yourself, but also with family and friends of like, okay, it might not make sense to you, but this is something I want to do and I want to give, time and effort to, because I know, it's something that's going to transform, my life for the better. And I think having more of those conversations, but also documenting it, because a lot of, again, history has been
Yep.
rewritten, and, um, not the full story, has been shared or amplified, and like really having, um, connection, like more of conversations with, our grandparents, like, generationally, like thinking about these stories and how much of an impact, they have for future generations, and just having, um, that information through storytelling, I feel like it's just as important as, something you would read in a textbook.
Agree.
Um,
Agree.
so it's really like in me thinking about creating Black and National Parks, it was just like, okay, I've always had this yearning for like, okay, well, I learn about all of this white history. Where were Black people? Like, what were they doing? What were they experiencing? And not from a, woe is me perspective or like negative, but just like the joy of it, the discovery, the exploring of these experiences, and really like bringing that into the fold of like, this is something new and different that I want to expand, and not get wrapped up in the sadness
Right.
of it, but really like, okay, this is inspiring, this is motivating. I can create memories, like joyful memories.
I
And
think this was so
immerse
important.
yourself.
Didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think that's what's so important about what we're doing. Anybody melanated in this space is doing, because essentially what we're doing is we're interrupting, trauma.
Yeah.
We are interrupting narratives about, what it is that people who look like us should or shouldn't be doing when it comes to green spaces.
Yeah.
So in our own way, we're rewriting history as well, right? We're rewriting the story as well. When you look at when you talk about like where we were looking at our grandparents, like where were Black people in this whole situation? We know where they were. Like if we go a few generations back, they were utilizing these green spaces to escape the atrocities of slavery, right?
Yeah.
So the woods for them was not, it was not a fun situation. It was a matter of life or death.
Yeah.
I believe in epigenetics. So, I do believe that trauma can be passed down. And I believe that some of what we're seeing right now, in terms of when people like this whole concept of like, we don't do that, I do believe that that is some of that inherited trauma from our ancestors, if you will. So what we're doing when we are encouraging other people to go outside, when we're bringing people along, when we're showcasing ourselves in these green spaces and giving other people melanated folk, permission to do the same. Essentially, what we're doing is basically interrupting that trauma that somehow still has its hands on us. You know, yeah, I do think so. When you talk about, the importance of it in terms of um, the future and what comes of it from there, I think that it is very critical. The work that we're doing. It might just seem like a walk in the park to some people, but it actually is a lot deeper than that.
Yeah.
And I realize that as well. Often at the end of campouts, especially when people come for the first time, it becomes very apparent to me that we've like recoded something in that individual, and again, just gives you the inspiration to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. And that's this is hard work, y'all. Like I have just as much, I have to remind myself that I can take a step back, or I can take breaks from this, because it isn't easy. Because a lot of it, I do have to, I am triggered, from learning things, reading things about our past, and, even things that are happening present day that connect to, racism and exclusion and white supremacy, and, this huge part of our history, policies, all of that, laws. And it's like, these things actually happen. Like, I'm not, like imagining, or like, this is a dream, and like, everybody woke up and it was fine. It's like, no, these things have really happened, and that's really had an impact on melanated people generationally. Like, generationally, it's continuing to impact, and it's hard to because you're constantly living it and experiencing it. It would feel so much better to just let it, like, purge it and it be gone. But that's not the case, and I feel like just going through that mourning, like there's a mourning that you're constantly experiencing of like the loss of that relationship to the land, relationship to community, like bits and pieces are being removed from that, experiencing that trauma. But then also thinking about the layers of like, how do we keep building ourselves and uplifting ourselves through this work, And that's what I'm learning more of. Like, it's not even just it's not even like, it's so much more than just visiting national parks. Like,
So
and
is.
that's where I was just like, oh my goodness, it's when I, there's the surface level components of it, but like when you really start to dig deep, you see the parallels and the connections to the history and to the untold stories and to um, genealogy and family members and like their experiences and like things that they don't want to talk about because it's so traumatic. Like, it's a lot. It is a lot. So I have to remind myself that it's okay to take a step back and find more time for rest
Right. I think
and joy.
that was one of the things that was most surprising to me, kind of making this transition,
Yeah.
with Camping Noir is that it's like white supremacy is like embedded in
Yeah.
everything.
Yes.
And it's just like the simplest of things, like it's a powerful system, like, and so
You know the
going
truth.
back to what I said earlier before, you think you're just planning a hike or, a camping trip, and it's so much more than that. Like, and just having to come to terms with that, like in no way are you really
Yeah.
escaping the clause of white supremacy. And so this also becomes about advocacy
Yep.
as well. It's not just, again, the fun part.
Mm.
It's also about advocacy. We didn't even get to, start to talk about how it's also about creating, environmental stewards and things of that nature. We didn't even touch on that, but that's a whole nother avenue of
Yeah.
it. So, it's very easy for people to see the outward production of things that you place on social media and all of that. But,
Mhm.
not really understanding that when you're going in front of these organizations, again, who are very predominantly white and male dominated, and or going up for grants and things of that nature, that this skin meat suit that I'm in
Mhm. Mhm.
is very much playing a role in whether or not I get the grant for, the youth programs that I'm trying to do this year, or whether or not I get the sponsorship for, whatever new initiative that I'm
Mhm.
trying to create. So it is still very much, um, you know, the same system of white supremacy that we see everywhere else, and probably, where it shows up blatantly.
Yeah.
Um, it's interwoven in here too, and it often feels like some things you're doing are an uphill battle.
Yeah.
So I agree with you in what you're saying. Like, you do have to give yourself time to kind of just step back for a second and regroup, because it will wear you down. I mean, I get a lot of energy and a lot of inspiration and a lot of encouragement and support from, my friends and family, and especially like the women who make up the Camping Noir community. Like, love them to life, like, seriously. But the flip side of that, like, if that wasn't there,
Right.
I probably would have walked away a long time ago, because it was like I did not expect to come in here and plan a hike and get beat down, like, or, to be told that I don't belong here or have to defend
Yes.
my me taking up space here right now.
Mind
Like,
your
I never
business.
expected I have to do this
Mind your
here. Corporate
business.
America, that makes sense. Having to go out on a trail,
Mhm.
that doesn't make
Mhm.
sense. The things that happen when, I'll never forget. This was just last year. We were walking, and there was a group of us. It's actually a year, the February hike last year,
Mhm.
and we're walking, and a white woman comes up to us, and she says, it clearly we're all in like athleisure wear, we got backpacks on, our hiking boots, the whole nine. And she goes, "Oh, so what are you doing here, ma'am?" The same thing that you are doing here, like the exact same thing that you're doing here. But then, and then not too long after that, I don't know where we were probably on the side of the hike that kind of went along a road, and then you have like a police officer that's like driving by, and the question was, "Are you girls all right?"
Mhm.
It's like, "Yeah, we're good. Like, thanks for checking," but you are not doing this to everybody else that's out here right now. So it is like oftentimes like just defending your right to take up space in these areas as well.
Right.
And that is something that you do not see coming when you start at Camp Noir or Black and National Parks or
Yeah.
any one of these other groups that are out here trying to do the work
Yeah.
of just making it so normalizing,
Yep.
us being here and taking up the same space and breathing the same air and watching the same birds and checking out the same trees and hugging the same trees that you are.
Mhm.
Like, that's the thing that I think you don't see coming. And
Yeah.
it, like, to
You
your point,
can't
it
be,
can wear you
and
down.
now you can't be upset
Correct. Correct.
when
You
it
got to,
happens. Of like, oh, you're overreacting.
yeah.
Like,
Hmm. Yeah.
excuse me.
Yeah. Did anybody ask you today what you're doing out here? No? That part.
And it's like you have to absorb that. Like that's the part where I'm just like, I don't need this in my life. Like I
Yeah.
literally do not need. Like it's like like you become this sponge, and you're like, I just need to get rid of. Like I don't need it. Like I don't need
Yeah.
this because then it impacts everything else, and like it puts you more. Like it puts more of a wall up, a more of a guard. For you to have more experiences because you really don't know like how people are going to engage with
Right.
you moving forward of like oh I have to do I need to be scared, do I not talk to this person, do I keep my head down, like not make eye contact, like things are just like what, like
And
this is what
all
it's
you want to do is just go for a walk or pitch a tent. That's all you want to do.
literally and that's I mean I've experienced this in the world of birding, because I'm a birder and I've been doing that for about 15 16 years, and like having those moments of just like I am just here to like that's all I'm doing, just looking at birds, and then people are just like how do you know all this information, like where did you learn this, and like the awe of it. I'm like so I shouldn't be learning things, like I don't like that part of it is just like it absolutely floors me that like it's it becomes this spectacle,
Yeah.
and I'm literally just like I am just
Right.
birding.
But that's why we have
Why is
to
it
keep doing
such
what
a
we're
thing?
doing because we have to. Only if we continue to do what we're doing will we normalize these things, right? All in one respect, you can't. I feel what I'm about to say. I'm going to reword it probably after it comes out, but I feel like
Speak
you
your
can't.
piece. This is my channel.
Um,
Speak your piece.
I feel like you can't really fault people for kind of like staring at something that's very different, right? Um, but at the same time, it's kind of like, but why am I so different? It's kind of like it's
Yeah.
cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
But I think that's why it's important that we just keep doing what we're doing because we have to normalize it. And it's not, like we mentioned earlier, it'll break you down if you let it. I mean, not even break you down, it'll wear you down if you let
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Because again, it's one of those areas that you don't expect these things to like show up.
Mhm.
And sometimes when they show up in these spaces, it's even more egregious than it is in the other spaces.
Yeah.
Um,
But it's
but
the subtlety
yeah,
that gets you because it's not blatant, like you were saying. Like a lot of the times, it's not blatant. You can't just like, oh, this person said this directly to me. It's the insidiousness of it that gets me. It's just like built in, like you were saying. It's so embedded that people aren't even able to decipher what's um, what's racist or what's discriminatory, or even like thinking about the layers of historical negativity that's been baked into our experiences. And I think that's where it's just like history show, like we have all these questions of like how do we do better, how do we, and it's like history has shown us over and over again, like given us that answer. So I don't know why it's like this brand new like question of like, oh, we haven't figured this out yet, when we've had so many examples of what not to do.
that's a whole nother life.
So that's where I'm just like, why are we still
About the
asking these questions of like how do we
experience.
engage and how do we get more people? It's and that's the part where I'm like, the relationship building is just as important. Getting to know people is so important, and like not these surface level relationships, like really getting to know people and finding the commonalities. of what we experience, and not invalidating people and their experiences, because they are just as valid. Like, you might not have the same experience, doesn't mean that it's not true and it hasn't happened. It's just, it's coming from a different perspective, but in terms of it focusing on more of, marginalized, historically marginalized groups, it's literally, well, oh, okay, I need to be more cognizant of the historical layers, and, like, not putting that burden on melanated people to answer, for me, or to, like, okay, just tell me everything I need to know and I'll do better.
Yeah.
But, like, that's part of being human. Like, we all have to experience life in a way that we're learning, hopefully learning and growing, but we're building on that knowledge and that wisdom and understanding of our lived experiences. And it's not like an exam where you can just take a test and, like, you pass or fail, but it's not black and white.
Right, it's not.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's not. But it is, but it's not.
It
Right?
is, but it's not.
It is, but it's not. But I also think that's why it's so important that anytime I'm given an opportunity to speak in front of non-melanated groups, I'm always going to show up as black as I possibly can. And, not to, not in any way that's like, to make a mockery out of black people, but so you understand, like, this is a serious situation, and that there are certain behaviors that are happening within this space and this industry that are completely perpetuating this whole exclusiveness, of melanated bodies in these green spaces. And so utilizing our platform as much as possible, and whenever we can, to basically educate our non-melanated brothers and sisters on what that is and what that looks like and how they can do better. I'm not exactly of the mindset that I'm not here to teach you or to show you, unless I think that you're just being just ignorant by choice. I do feel like if I'm given that opportunity, somebody asks me the question, then I am going to share my story, because maybe the way that I communicated to them might be a catalyst for them to change. So I'm not, like, I understand it, and I understand kind of the fatigue that comes with that. So I'm not faulting anybody if that is ever, like, their sentiment about being placed in that situation. But for me, I feel like I have to use my voice. Like, I have to communicate with you, what it is that, again, creates these systems of oppression in outdoor green spaces, how the outdoors is for everybody, helping you understand that. And so each and every time it's an opportunity, I'm going to do that. I think it's very important also for us, regardless of what our group is, to really introduce ourselves to the national park system, the leaders within our community, the other organizations that are kind of funding and managing and overseeing these green spaces, and letting them know exactly who we are and what we're doing here. And that ultimately, regardless of what other tenets of your organization is, ultimately the common ground for all of us is to diversify the outdoors. And so, if you hear nothing else, that needs to be the message that you get. And you need to know that I will be constantly in your face, on your email, and everywhere else I need to be to work towards making that change happen here. So, I don't, I hope that doesn't come across militant to anybody, but I just feel like, if I have this platform, for whatever reason, I'm just going to utilize it to really expand these green spaces for all of us.
Interesting how you say, I guess different meaning based off who it's coming from. So when you're like, the outdoors is for everyone, I feel like there's two different meanings of like,
do tell. I'm interested.
Well, just coming from us as melanated Black women, if you were to say that to me, I'm like, yes, it's for everyone. But then I get that from my white counterparts, and I'm like, but it's not.
Yes.
So I'm like, ooh, like, but I need you to understand that part of it without getting defensive and like, oh, what do you mean by that? Or you're angry, or like, But like, no, there's a reason I'm saying that's not completely true, because there has been that pushback, you know, around diversity, equity, inclusion, and even justice. Like, you
Yeah.
know, the things, you know, and in terms of being policed,
Yeah.
and what we do, being watched, or, you know, whatever, like that comes into play too, of just, when you're talking about grants, and like, you know, you can get funding, but then the hoops you have to jump through to keep the funding,
Literal
to do
hoops.
the very basic work that everybody should be doing. Sorry, let me just, yeah, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Like,
Yes.
why should it, why am I needing to ask for funding? Just write me the check.
Yes.
Just write me the check. I know what I'm supposed to
Right.
do. I don't need you to monitor me, micromanage. Like, I feel like if anybody, like, we get it. Like, we get it. We don't need to, like, you know, we shouldn't have to write a proposal. Like, we understand, because it's our lived experience. We live it.
Yeah.
So the fact that we have to even prove any of that, I think is beyond me. But that again speaks to the perpetuating of these things, and the detriment, because um, it creates opportunities for everybody. We're not just saying these things for selfish reasons. Like, we know it's going to benefit
Oh yeah.
everybody. Like,
Absolutely. I
everybody.
mean, I chose to focus on Black and brown women, and then last year, you know, adding our youth into the mix. But I mean, when we talk about outdoors, we're talking Black, brown, male, female, able-bodied, not
Mm-hmm.
able-bodied, queer,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like all the things, like, you know, all the things. I just chose to start with Black and brown women because I feel like when I look in the community, you know, if you want to change the trajectory of the community, you start with the women, right? Or at least that's how my grandmother kind of raised me
Yeah.
to, you know, my thinking. So I just felt like, you know, we're talking about creating a generational change. If I can go ahead and change it with the women who are going to ultimately end up being the matriarchs within our community and can pass that knowledge down, then, you know, that'll create something that's sustainable. But you know, that was just my choice for Camping Noir. That doesn't mean, you know, and I feel like the work that I'm doing here also creates an open lane
Yep.
for other marginalized groups to also follow in those footsteps. So yeah, I totally I totally see where you're coming from and
Yeah.
understand what you're
Yeah.
saying.
Yes, I'm learning so much more about how to be a leader, because I've gone off of someone else's blueprint, and I'm like, well, I can create my
Mm-hmm.
own. I don't need to.
Yeah,
I am learning stuff.
yeah,
So I feel more empowered now, like, without thinking about it as like, oh, I'm going to fail, or like, if I'm not doing it this way, then, you know, things aren't going to be successful, or I'm not going to have as much support. Like,
I agree with
like,
you.
at this point, I'm like, I'm going to do what I need to do for me. Because for me, it is, um, I know some people are like, oh, that's extreme. Like, it is life or death, because it encompasses, um, that heavy weight of it all, like the lived experience, and like the toxic stress, and having to, you know, the burden of like putting out other people's fires. Like, as Black women, like, we carry so much. So I'm just like, I don't want to feel like the stuff that's important to me, or that I'm passionate about, I'm putting to the wayside to accommodate other people, and they're not even trying. Like, they're
Right,
not even giving effort. Like, I
right.
don't want to do that. So I'd rather it be selfish, but like in a way that I'm like, okay, I'm uplifting myself, and I'm continuing, to make an impact beyond myself. But like, I have to pay attention to my needs first, and make sure that at least I'm around to like inspire other people. Like, not even to, like, I don't even necessarily have to complete, something or produce something, but just to have joy and to have a smile because I'm passionate about something, to give love, to give support. Um, that to me shows leadership. So this is an Oprah show right now. Let's give it up for Oprah.
Yeah, I'm letting nature fix our lives.
But this is what I mean. Like, I don't get to have a lot, and this is essentially why I wanted to do the story project, because it is, I got so tired of the surface level, like, you just say what people want to hear, and it's just like, no, the realness, like we need the realness and the vulnerability, without feeling like, oh, we have to, edit our words or like feelings, or like, these are things we're experiencing and what we're going through, and that's just as much truth. Like, share your truth. um and that is part of, this whole life journey. Like, we are on a journey, each and every one of us. And we have all of these connections and intersections, as humans on this earth. And then earth itself is a life force, like it's sustaining
True.
us. And
We forget that.
literally, like, why are we like, and then you just think about like the things that we focus on, and you're just like, that does not matter. Like, why are we so caught up in, yeah, so
You don't want to get me started on the climate change chapter of this conversation because, girl,
we've had some interesting
we have
conversations.
we have definitely had some interesting conversations. Like, so we're just gonna watch her blow up. That's what we're gonna do. Okay,
Yes.
cool.
Yes. So what are your plans for, like, now that you've kind of started this journey for yourself with the national parks and like just more exploration and discovery? Like, what's on your radar, in the near future with national parks?
I'm going to say more of that, like
Yeah.
more discovery of, the capital in national park, because I am absolutely intrigued in going to those, and really kind of like challenging myself to those experiences because they seem to be on
Mhm.
a different level
Yeah. Yeah.
than
Yeah.
the other ones. And like I mentioned earlier, just kind of entering this chapter, of my experience in green spaces, where I am learning more about the history of the space as well,
Mhm.
and kind of and basically, figuring out ways to like interweave that into, um, the experiences that I'm able to share with other people when we're out there. So have I figured out how to do that yet? Not fully.
Mhm.
I am learning that a lot of the historical, areas, the lowercase n areas, that often have a historian that comes with them that will take the time to explain that to you. But I also realize that a lot of those individuals are also white
Yeah.
most of the time. And so when we talk about history or revisionist, history, I feel like there's always an additional layer, or what is the backstory on what you're
Yeah.
telling me there as well. And so
Yeah.
kind of taking whatever information I can get on the surface level and really digging deeper into that to figure out, kind of like, what is the intersection of melanated, indigenous folk in this storyline as
Mhm.
well. So I say that's probably like my main start,
Mhm.
if we will. And then, most likely, it just makes sense to me, especially in having this conversation, to kind of start with the places that I spend the most time in, that,
Yeah.
my feet have crossed the most miles across those
Mhm.
areas. Because ultimately, for some reason, that's probably where I'm probably most connected to those spaces in the first place. So if I can then add kind of like the backstory and the history into that, and just deepen my connection to that space, I mean, that's perfect, if you ask me.
Yes, yes, I love that. And it's your journey. So like, you make it what you want, what makes sense for you. And um I encourage everybody to do that. And I think, the storytelling, I feel like is going to be, um just as important of, where are you starting? Where do you want to go? And like, in between all of that, you're building that network, you're building that support system, near and far. And I've come to know so many amazing, wonderful people, especially Black people, that just like have shared so much wisdom, with me, that I'm just so appreciative and grateful, as I'm continuing to expand my journey and learn more, especially around the history and like, the contributions. Like, we've done some amazing things,
We are
and
doing some
right,
amazing things. I
we,
think,
we are
not just to cut
doing
you
amazing
off,
things. Yes,
yes, but
yes.
when I kind of stumbled into this space, I was so surprised to know how many people are already carrying this torch, right, in different areas of the world,
Mhm.
the country, things of that nature. Like, it was mind blowing to me. Like, oh wait, here I am thinking that I'm this little army of one in my
Mhm.
little nook and cranny of New Jersey, and there's an entire tribe out here.
Mhm.
So like you said, we've done, but we are like also actively doing amazing, amazing things
Mhm.
to really like change the landscape, to diversify the outside, to really give each other permission to just take up space in national parks and these green
Yeah.
areas.
And rest too. That's a big part of it. Like in being able to visit these places, it's a form of rest. It's a form of um letting our bodies know that we can enjoy and we can immerse ourselves in the beauty of nature and the outdoors without it feeling like, oh, well, I have to, be working for so long to get to this point. But like, no, you can start now. And that literally, it means so much more now to me in terms of our ancestors not having that opportunity, like you were saying, of just like being in survival mode and having to um, constantly be worked, like literally worked, but also not having that space to just exist and um, rest their body and not like the sleep like that we think of when we think of rest, but like really like holistically, mind, body, and soul, resting. And I feel like having these opportunities has expanded that idea for me of like being able to daydream and reimagine how I want to have these experiences for myself as I get older. And I feel like I appreciate them so much more knowing that I have that connection um, through my ancestors. So we should do uh, um, a talk show. Let's do a talk show.
We need to let people get on our phone conversations. That's
Literally, like there's so much more to share, and that's what I'm like, okay, I definitely need, like, I know I'm doing the right thing because there's story upon story upon story and experiences that just we can just relate to instantly, and it's not like you have to like like pulling teeth, like, oh, I have to like try to, it's instant. And I love that. So right, sounds like another book. I have like 5 books in me, so I'm ready. Like I am ready.
oh girl.
So I
I
don't
don't
know
know
if
if
you
I
have
got
another
another
book in
4
you, but
days
I'm
of going
sure.
hard.
I mean, oh, literally.
We'll see. We'll see.
But this is I love sharing this space with you. Thank you so much. Again, I've learned so much, and like I wanted, like we all obviously we're going to be talking more. What do you have coming up for Camping Noir and for yourself this year, and celebration of a new year, but also thinking about opportunities with the work that you do?
Yeah. So, another loaded question because I'm about to be on a tirade. So another year of just outdoor adventures, if you will. We have our monthly goddess hike on the last Sunday of every month. Kind of also building our online community. So we do have a private Facebook group, and just really that allows us to reach more women, nature loving sister friends, as I call us, all over. So being able to like leverage the knowledge that's in there,
Mhm.
um, you know, um, leverage or answer the curiosity that's in there, because there are a lot of people who are like, I haven't done it yet, but I want to,
Yeah.
so being able to utilize that as a platform to encourage more people to go outside. I'm excited that there will be 7 of us. I think 2 of which were on the call tonight. Angie, I don't know if you're still there, but we will be climbing Mount Kilimanjaro in June. So
I
yes,
hope there's like
um,
confetti that I can like put
girl,
on the screen.
I'll need you to be
That's awesome.
somewhere in deep meditation for all 7 of those days, because yeah, that's going to be like a huge personal challenge, but also like, I tell these ladies, and again, I get so much joy from them. Like, I come with a crazy idea and I'm expecting them to be like, that's crazy. And they be like, yes, I'm coming too. And I'm like, this is not how it's supposed to go, but let's do it. Let's do
You're
it.
like, there's no going back.
So doing that, we did last October we launched our first youth hike, and so this year I will be putting on five, basically a series of five additional youth events here in the New Jersey Northeast Corridor area. So hopefully, kind of really digging into that and really reaching back to our
Yeah.
younger generations and starting to foster some sense of excitement for them in terms of green spaces and natural experiences.
Mm-hmm.
This will be the fifth year of the book, which I have right here.
So wait, has it officially the anniversary come up yet, or is it?
So the fifth year anniversary will be November
Oh
1st.
my gosh!
Yeah,
Happy early anniversary. Time is weird.
very weird. So I'm thinking right now about whether or not I'm going to do like a version two or expand
Yeah.
upon what's there because again, like you said, and we talked about earlier,
Mhm.
like experiences in nature is just not a one-stop shop. So the things I've learned in here are great, but I've also learned so much more beyond that.
Yeah.
So just trying to figure out like a way to kind of revamp that and revitalize the information that's in it and possibly like have the book signing I never had. I don't know. We'll talk about that. Don't give me that face.
No, I'm excited. I'm like, when is this happening?
Maybe, possibly. And I really just want to get more involved with kind of the institutions that are managing our green spaces, especially locally
Mm-hmm.
in the tri-state area, to really see how we can partner with them and become part of um, the system, if you will, that is ultimately helping getting people of color outside in mass, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of times I feel like, we talk about representation, we talk about DEI and these things, these natures, but there's not people that look like us sitting at the table.
Yeah.
I think that's a critical flaw.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and I encourage everybody who's in this space like us to do the same thing, like help make decisions from the
Yeah.
inside, seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is one of the goals to basically get involved is so that I can do work from the inside instead of working, from the outside in
Mm-hmm.
on some of these initiatives and hopefully making, a bigger change in that respect. And then as
Yeah,
we
I love
talked
that.
about earlier, just digging more into the history of it all.
Right?
And
There's
then,
so much
making
stuff I'm
that
like,
part
why am I
the
learning
hard
of
work,
this?
if you will. Yeah, so it's going to be a busy year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know all about
Yeah.
that. And I know you
Yeah.
and I might have some things coming up in the future. Maybe,
Well, the book.
Lord, y'all done got to start it on this book. Find the book. But Black and National Park will be coming up, and then
Yeah.
the initiative I'm working on with camping
Yeah.
and things of that nature. So, yeah, we'll be back together again.
Yes.
That's cool.
Yes. So if anyone wants to get I am so sorry. They're probably not in here anymore, but someone did ask a question earlier and I don't see, this is me and like getting so caught up in the conversation and I'm not even paying attention to the feed. Because I'm like, yeah, y'all can ask questions and I totally am
Ooh,
like, but
wisdom.
someone was asking what's a national park that they can visit in California or camp. I don't know if you've been to California though for
I
camp.
have not yet done anything in California, so for that
Mhm.
person, I would love to talk to you and figure out how and if we can make something happen in Cali. I would love to, but I don't know anything off the top of my head. I'm
Mhm.
not even going to sit here and lie to you.
Yeah,
I know Joshua
I would
is
say as
here. You
far as
have
national parks,
Anthony.
you have a lot to choose from because it's California. It's
Well, yeah,
massive.
and
So
that's one of the
I
reasons
would
why I want to go
definitely.
as well. And we're not
I
just,
always say go to
you know,
the national park website and like look at. I always tell people to start with their state. So look at the national park nps.gov website. Look at your state, see what is available, and that again includes the capital A and capital P as well as the lowercase. I feel like people forget so much or not, don't even know that there's the park units, like the designations are different, but they're just as important, especially, in terms of like the time of the year where there's like overcrowding and like, places that people go to a lot and then the ones that aren't as visited. And I realized this with COVID, with the Midwest region national parks, like that spiked tremendously. They weren't under visited, but like millions more people started to visit those parks,
They
knowing that
shut
like
down a few of them during COVID because of that. They weren't prepared.
exactly. So like knowing that there's going to be more of the visitation, and even with the newer park sites, for instance, the Medgar Evers National Park site in Mississippi was, I think, opened in December of 2020. So it's fairly new, but like the history piece, as far as, Emmett Till, like connection to Emmett Till, NAACP, all of that stuff, I think is crucial for us to learn. So I'm hoping that anybody who's just like, yeah, I don't know where to start with your state. Start with your state. And you might have those connections through state parks or metro parks to get you connected to those public lands. But start small. Don't feel like you have to do a whole backpacking trip or whatever. Like you can literally start with just a walk or hike. Like it doesn't even need to be anything extreme.
Actually, I
But
encourage
yeah, I
that.
do that.
I actually encourage that. That's a very good tip. I encourage that behavior. Don't go hard the first time. Don't.
Because then you're less likely to go back
Right.
because you're just like, oh, I had the worst time, and you're like, I don't want to do that again. But because of the way you approached it, I think that
Right.
prevents
You'll
it
be
from
like,
being
well, how many miles did you do?
permanent.
20 on your first time out? No wonder. Are your feet okay?
Like, were you training for a triathlon?
Have
Like,
you
what is
had
going
to
on?
go for a 6 mile walk at 9 o'clock at night?
Right.
You didn't take any of the advice we said earlier.
I would love, love, love to continue a part 2, 3, 4, because obviously there's going to be more experiences that you're creating for yourself. So this is not the end. This is just the beginning. And I'm hoping with the work that I'm continuing to do, more things are kind of opening up more opportunities for me and like things that I'm thinking about as far as moving forward with my work. I do have a special announcement coming up that I'm so excited for. I can't wait. Like, I feel like it's Christmas, when you get up for Christmas and you're like opening the, like literally you cannot sleep. Like that's what it's going to be for me. But I will share that very soon. So look out for those details. I'm hoping to have some more Instagram lives for the month of February. Again, it's Black History Month. So I really want to amplify this everyday Black people sharing their experiences with visiting national parks. And then in case anybody doesn't know, August is when Black and National Parks Week happens. So it will be the end of August. It's always the last week of August. And this year it will start on the birthday of the National Park Service, which is August 25th. And August is also an interesting month because there's Black August, which focuses on incarceration and civil rights. And so there's layers to that in terms of like the historical components that I definitely want to tie more into that month. And then as some people know, I was sharing in the comments and posts that I have an idea for a Black and National Parks conference. So I have a survey currently through my Linktree. If anybody has any ideas they want to share, that can be, if you want to have a particular person present, if you want to do a certain activity, all the ideas, all the feedback is going to be helpful as I start to think about this and bring this idea to life. So I definitely want to start getting that feedback soon. So share far and wide for me, please. And I will have more updates. So thank you again.
Thank
I've again so
you.
much shared this, loved sharing this time with you. And I'm looking forward to our next conversation.
You too. Thank you again for this. This was great.
And I'm glad we got to actually see
I
each other. I'm
know
like,
it
that was
worked
a hot
out after all. See, listen, you were stressing. I'm like, girl, nature tells you don't stress. It's gonna happen the way it's gonna happen. Just gotta ride the wave. But it worked
Thank you.
out perfectly.
And everybody, enjoy your Tuesday. It's the start of the week, so make sure you continue to celebrate Black History Month, the contributions of Black people, Black love, like all the things.
Yes. Black
Please.
love. Day.
I love you, and have a good evening.
Bye, boo. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Good night.